All right, I move that the items on the meeting agenda constitute essential business of this committee. Meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans, considering the COVID-19 outbreak, and any rule conflicting with the governor's executive order permitting electronic meetings be suspended.
I second that motion.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark and Ingrid. All right, I'll go down the list since all in favor.
So we got to say present and yes, right?
Yep. Thanks, Mark. Say present and yes. All right, I'll just Ingrid McIntyre.
Present and yes.
Jeff Gibson.
Present and yes.
All right, Mark Overlock.
Present and yes.
Awesome. I think that's, am I missing anybody?
Grant just showed up, so we
Awesome.
will probably
All right,
let
this meeting is started officially. Hey, Grant, it's good to have you. Thanks for coming. All right, I actually don't know if we have a formal agenda for this meeting, but I think we all know what we're here to talk about, which is just the ongoing edits of the Nashville Davidson County Continuum of Care Charter. Thank you so much, Jeff, for working so hard on this since our last meeting, and thanks, Susie, for putting it all together so that we can look at it, and for sending it to us last week and this morning while you're on vacation. I really appreciate that. Also, just for clarification, we've been focusing on, the wording of the charter, and we also kind of started talking a little bit about the committee structure the last couple of meetings, and I propose to table that conversation about the committee structure until a later meeting, and really just focus on the wording like we have been so far, and wrap that up. If you noticed in our draft charter, there's a comment from Judy Tackett that says that the committee structure is actually the responsibility of the HPC Executive Committee. So I think we can at some point weigh in on that conversation if we want to, but I think for now it would be helpful just to focus on what we've been focusing on so far. Any objections to that, or questions about that, or comments?
Great suggestion.
Hey, Will, do you want me to see if Kenya can pass me the ball and I can call up the actual document so we can scroll through it, or do you want that visual?
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Just because I'm fine without it because I have it pulled up on my end. What does everyone else think? Would it be helpful for Susie to share her screen?
I think it would be.
Yeah, I always
Okay.
think that's helpful. Just
Okay.
you can see the changes made in real time.
Okay, Kenya, if you can hand it over the presenter ball or whatever that thing's called. Great. Are you? Yeah.
I'm sorry, you want me to hand over, can you say it again?
The presenter ball to me, Susie, so that I can share my.
Okay.
Okay. If I can do this, guys.
If you hit share and then there you go.
All right. Now I want to go.
And just real quick,
Guys,
I wonder if somebody would like to read the values and equity statement that we have on the agenda for today that we decided to put on there and read at the beginning of each meeting.
Sure. I can do that. I think I have that.
Okay.
Susie, while sharing your screen, turn your video off because it's causing a little lag.
All right, let me figure it out. Give me a minute
Okay.
here. I'm kind of confused.
Do you want me to go ahead and read that statement?
Yeah, we just might want Susie to mute to help with the echo there.
Hold on. Can someone, hey, can you for me?
No, I can't turn off your video. It's at the bottom of your screen. You'll see where it says start video. And since you're sharing your screen, it's probably at the top. If you move your mouse, hover over it at the top of the screen, it'll come down. You just put yourself on mute. Turn the video off. You don't need to be on mute. Turn your video. There you go. And now you can speak.
Okay, Ingrid. Yeah, if you could go ahead.
Okay, this is our values and equity statement. We define racism as racial prejudice plus the misuse of power by systems and institutions. Misuse can be intentional or unintentional. We're mindful of the racial inequities across housing, economic mobility, healthcare, criminal justice, and other systems. These all contribute to racial inequities and homelessness. I pledge to stay mindful of the power and privilege that I bring into every space that I enter and conversation that I have. I pledge to actively and intentionally practice anti-racism when participating in Governance Charter Revision Committee meetings and representing this committee and the CoC in the community, and in talking about homelessness and housing issues in Nashville. I feel like I should say amen after that, but I won't.
Thank you, Ingrid, and thanks, Abigail, for that reminder. I finally found our agenda, so thanks, Susie, for sending that out. And I do think it would be helpful if someone can point out opportunities to or examples of how we've acted in an anti-racist manner or how we could act in an anti-racist manner during our meetings. Please chime in and share that. All right. I think we're ready to roll. Again, thank you, Jeff, for the edits and for Susie for putting them together. At the last meeting, we talked about adding a glossary, and that is now in the document, and it looks great. So thanks for that. I'll kind of look to the group to think about how we should go through all of these edits. I don't think going through each one is a good use of our time, but we do have some points that probably require some discussion. We definitely have one around attendance, which is why Grant Winter's here. Thanks again, Grant, for coming. And then Jeff, if you wouldn't mind pointing out a few that you think might need the group's attention as well, since you wrote since you added a bunch since the last revision, I think that would help. If you don't mind doing that. So,
Hey, Will,
yeah.
just I found a couple of areas where I could add a comma or period, and I'll just get those to Susie. I don't think we have to waste time with those kind of changes. So we can get substance. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think maybe after this meeting we can, clean up this document and give it a good read. I might actually try to read it out loud to myself and try not to fall asleep during that process. But I think when I do that, sometimes it helps me kind of identify some things that I might not just, scanning it over my computer. So I think, maybe before the next meeting, we can look at a cleaner document just to see where we are, and then have at least another meeting about it. All right. Let's see. I should know where this attendance discussion starts, Suze. Unless you're...
Well, it's right there on the screen in front of you. I mean, the
I
make
gotcha.
reasonable efforts to
Sorry.
attend.
Okay.
So what's page 3, since you're not looking at the screen, since you don't have a screen, we're looking at like the bottom of page 3.
Okay. All right. So thanks again, you all. All right. So here's, I think, a little bit of context. We've gone from, I don't know, a meeting every month for the general membership to proposing 4 meetings, 1 a quarter at least. And I think that's progress. And then we've talked about, whether or not we want an attendance requirement, like you have to attend 50% of the meetings, and which means that if we do have something like that, we'll have to document and keep track of all that. So, I propose that we take out the attendance requirement because it seemed kind of burdensome, and it seemed like we were in agreement last meeting about that. And then Susie took it back to Grant and others, I think in the membership committee, and they had strong feelings the other way, which I definitely welcome. And this isn't something that, I'm going to get really passionate about or anything like that. But I do think that I'll just state my case, and then Grant, you can respond, and then we can have a discussion. I guess my little soapbox is that we can create meetings, these 4 meetings. I think we can create agendas that make people want to come. These agendas, these meetings can have really important updates that people want to hear. There might be some key knowledge shared by leaders in the community, and also maybe keynote speakers that we organize. We could have, awards that we give out. I've seen COCs, well, anyway, I won't give that example. But anyway, we could make up some sort of award to acknowledge folks. We could also just reach out directly to people that we want to attend the meeting and ask them to attend. So
You can also have pizza, which always worked really well. Pizza always works well.
Pizza, yeah. It was expensive, it added up, but no, I'm sure. You're right, Ingrid. That was fun. Especially 8-corner pizza from Jets. It was really
Yes.
Anyway, so that's the way I'd like to go. And I just don't really have a concern, the other way, like what would be the worst case scenario if we don't have an attendance requirement? Anyway, that's where I go, and happy to Grant or others, or let's just sorry to put you on the hot seat, Grant, but again, I appreciate you coming and want to hear from you, and then we can go from there. And I can't hear you.
Hey, Kenya and Paul, do you know whether Grant has the ability to unmute himself, or can unmute him?
From where I'm sitting, he's unmuted, but he doesn't have.
Can y'all hear me now? Okay. Sorry, we just changed some stuff up with my computer in my office, and so the settings were off. Anyway, I'll start again. I was just saying that I appreciate y'all taking the time to invite me and to share the membership committee's perspective. But first off, I think the membership committee really shares the thoughts around like changing the content and the structure of the meetings to be one that is much more appealing for folks to come, that wouldn't require just like because they're funded or the attendance requirements to be able to come. We talk about wanting to change. I think for 2 years since I've been on the committee, we've been talking about, I think it comes up fairly often, of what can we do to change the content of the meetings, because that directly impacts our ability for like recruitment and bringing in new people to the CoC. And so that comes out pretty often. So we do share the want and the willingness to do that, and like we want to be involved in making that happen in whatever way we as a committee can do that, because we do want to create a more robust CoC. And as part of, since recruitment is one of our strategic goals, we see that the content of the meeting that we're recruiting people to is very applicable and important to that. But I think on the attendance one, I think our perspective, and it was shared across the board in our committee, was that especially if we are reducing the number of meetings, that's already taking a burden off of, if you don't have to attend 6 out of 12, you're only have to attend 2 or 1. And if we're voting on certain things, we want kind of an informed electorate to be participating in those votes. It makes sense to require folks to be in attendance so that when they do make that vote, they understand what they're voting on. It also, I think there was a thought that like if we're voting on something, that there wasn't any potential strategy that anyone could take to like kind of sway the vote one way or the other, of like bringing a bunch of people in one meeting that became members and could vote automatically without having to have any sort of, not to say that would happen, but like just, I think that is a potential thing that could happen if there was no requirement of attendance prior to a certain meeting or a certain vote. And it's what we have seen, that when I've researched other CoCs around the country, most all of the other ones that I've seen have some sort of attendance requirement as a part of their CoC. Maybe not all of them, but obviously, but that's kind of what we've seen. So we didn't see it as that much of a burden to require, especially if it's only happening a couple times a year, to have an attendance requirement. That's 50%. That's just one meeting or 2 meetings a year. Is kind of our thought. And as far as like the burden on the membership committee to keep track of the attendance, that isn't really a concern. That, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, there is a Google spreadsheet that I kind of manage, but that could easily get passed on to somebody else who is the chair of the membership. And tracking that hasn't been overly cumbersome or burdensome on us as a committee. So that was kind of our main thoughts towards that, of why we thought it was important to keep that in there. But we're also open to more discussion on it. So
Thank you so much, Grant. Again, I appreciate you being here and sharing that, and also appreciate the work that you all have been doing at that committee, and look forward to learning more about it. All right, what do other folks think?
So this is Mark. I appreciate that perspective, and wouldn't want, it's interesting to think about the idea of someone managing to stack the deck and bring a bunch of new members in and sort of move the organization in a different direction. My problem with a hard and fast attendance requirement, it doesn't really take into account, this is just my bias because I serve on the Homelessness Planning Council, I'm on this committee, I'm on some other committees. And so last year, I was able to attend everything except those CoC meetings. I missed like 3 in a row, and suddenly I was ineligible to vote, even though I was doing all this work. It was insane. And so I'm frankly, one of the ones that was sort of pushing for a more reasonable requirement. So let's say it's 1 out of 2. You got to make at least 1 meeting out of the 2. And so I missed 1, and then I get sick for the next. And then, so do I wait a whole year to then rejoin the CoC as a voting member, even if I'm already doing, forget the fact that I'm an HPC member, but if someone's doing committee work, I would argue that they're staying up on all the issues that are coming before the CoC. So I'm just a little concerned about a hard and fast rule. I do appreciate the idea of, suddenly you get all these swing votes in and, suddenly the whole organization is kidnapped. So, but that's just my feeling. That's why I think we were trying to say, make it a reasonable, you're going to have a pretty good excuse to miss. So just my thought.
Grant, I really appreciated the fact that you talked about an informed electorate, because I think that Mark is definitely the exception and not the rule in terms of like how many meetings he attends, et cetera, which Mark, again, thank you for all of your service. You're amazing. And this comes out of an unhealthy place for me. So I'll be really upfront about that. But when we were doing the village stuff, that very thing happened to us, and that is that if we hadn't had membership like set in our church, there were 50 people came out of the woodwork to say no. And so I think that's just one of, again, I'm speaking out of a hurt in my own life that happened, but it is something that did happen, and I'm thankful that there were boundaries in line so that we could move forward with something that was a little more radical than the neighborhood was excited about. So those are just two of my thoughts. And I hold similar feelings to Will about not making things more complicated than they need to be.
I'll join with a very lawyerly non-answer here. I see the interest in having some skin in the game and having people be committed attendees and participants. I think administratively, this is going to be a little bit difficult to enact any type of attendance requirement in a workable fashion. We can do it. It will take more, I think, than just indicating in the charter that people need to attend semi-annual meetings. I think we would have to come up with some type of mechanism, to Mark's point about what happens if you don't attend those meetings, when your voting rights are re-engaged and the like. I'm fine to walk down that path, but I guess if I absolutely had to choose, I would say that's probably more involved than I'd recommend.
How we had been doing it in the past charters is, it was said that you had to have 50% of attendance in the last 12 months. And so it's kind of a rolling 12 months. And so if you miss, you can kind of pick it up pretty quickly. Well, especially when there was more meetings, you could get back in pretty quickly. But, and I think, yeah, so I think that is how it was in before. It's like 50% of, and, yeah, and we haven't had, like I said, in the 2 years that I've been in membership, we haven't had a lot of issues. I think they're like Ingrid said, I think Mark is the outlier in all of that. I think the majority of people who are involved in committees are also I think that wasn't a common occurrence of being actively involved in planning council and committee, but then losing voting rights. So, there are plenty of planning council members who don't have voting rights, but it's just because they never come to the general meetings. But
And Grant, forgive me if you already said this, but how was that? That's the way the wording you just used, I think, is a fairly easy way to address the issue. But who's keeping track of that?
Susie and I have been the ones that keep track of that. So it's Susie kind of helps with that, and then also the chair of the membership committee.
Okay.
All right. So I think we all kind of had a non-answer like Jeff, we saw both sides to it. I appreciate all of your input. You know, I would be okay with, you know, just taking, you know, respecting the membership committee's, you know, viewpoint here. And Grant, again, appreciate you coming. And Jeff, if you could, you know, add some language just maybe around the rolling 12 months thing, and if we could call out the actual person that, or committee that has the responsibility of doing the tracking, you know, then I'm okay with putting that in this draft that goes out for public comment. Or, you know, or we could actually do a vote on it if you all feel that strongly about it, but I'm okay with just, yeah, agreeing to put it back in there, the 50% attendance if you all want to.
Is there an option that we could, I mean, Will, I'm in agreement with you and wondering if it might be something that we sort of highlighted when we bring it back to the, like when we bring it up, or maybe that's a bad idea. I don't know. Just getting some other people's opinion. I just know that several of us on this commit or on this call right now probably feel very similarly and hold similar ideals and processes, and maybe somebody else could speak into it, but also I'm okay not having other people speak into it just to get it, you know, done or whatever.
The other comment that's a little unrelated, but that I'll bring up is, during COVID, there has been an access issue to meetings and attendance, which there have been, Tim is someone that comes to mind of, I don't know if that's an access issue, that had historically been a voting member when it was in person, and has lost voting rights since COVID. And so I'm wondering if there's any consideration of like the virtual meetings and the attendance that needs to be taken into account as well.
Thanks for bringing that up, Grant. I definitely think that's an equity, that's an equity issue that we brought up at the beginning that I think needs to be addressed for sure.
I don't know whether that gets addressed in this charter, because I'm hoping that the time of COVID sort of will become sort of something in our past. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay. But I did want to maybe propose like a finger on the pulse, and what we could do is send this issue out to the current voting members just for input. And, you know, if we send it out to, I don't know how many we've got, like 40 voting members, and give them, before, you know, to sort of, you know, give voice to sort of where they're coming from on this. If we've got a majority of the folks that write back sort of saying, yes, I think that attendance requirement is important, you know, my board requires it, blah, 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 blah. If you'd like that kind of feedback, I would try and do that between this meeting and the next, and then you would have that feedback for the next meeting if you felt that was important.
So I just, for point of clarification, we took out the phrase semi-annual. Are we wanting people to attend at least half of whatever the number of meetings are in a year? Is that what we're thinking? I'm just a little confused as to the number you have to attend.
Mark, that's what I feel like I'm hearing, that we're saying whatever the number is, it would be half. And I would assume, which I shouldn't do. Grant, can you speak into situations that Mark has brought up in the past, like, you know, if Tim comes and says, hey, I haven't been able to get on a Zoom call because I don't have access, is that something that maybe we could forgive? Or like if Mark comes and says, hey, my mom died and I had to be at her funeral and I couldn't be here today, I'm really sorry. Like, the other thing too that I just want to say is that we also have proxies, right? So like if So that's a whole piece as well. I
Yeah,
just wonder, I guess I'm asking Grant if there's grace around any of that.
Definitely. I mean, like and Susie and I, and Susie can speak to this too, we generally just try to err on the side of like giving someone voting rights if there's concern or like question of with still trying to be true to the requirement. But yeah, historically there have been instances where especially if there's discrepancy in attendance, if someone says they attended 50% of the meetings, like we generally take their word for it, just in case there was a mistake when it came to tracking the attendance. And then I will echo the proxy comment, is that's why there is a proxy. And if you are representing, I mean, that wouldn't work for an individual, but if you are representing, although I guess an individual could send a proxy on their behalf. So, but I'm not, that hasn't ever happened, so I'm not sure on that. But as far as if you're representing an organization, it doesn't even need, if it's not a voting day and you're just trying to gather attendance, you can send anybody from your organization to represent your organization. Like, it doesn't even have to be the primary proxy that gives you attendance, like, or for your attendance to count towards voting. So it could be just any employee of your organization, as long as they're checking in. And the idea behind that is that then they would then report back to the primary and proxy to relay any applicable information, so that we still would have an informed kind of electorate voting.
Yeah, we do try and err on the side of the potential voting member to give them as much attendance as they feel like they really have had. In the olden days, when we actually had the meetings, some folks would forget to sign in, and then these days, some folks can't access the meeting, through the Zoom, so they call in, and then we can't always see sort of who's calling in, although we do encourage them to let me know that they actually were calling in, and we'll give them the attendance kind of check. But we probably miss some folks that way. And again, if they say that they were listening in, then we trust them. Hey, Will, for sake of time, are we for an hour? I think if we're over at 11 and Grant is with us, and if this issue is pretty much closed up, we might want to move on to benefits of membership, because Grant was willing to talk about that from the membership committee standpoint too.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Okay, yeah, and Suze, I think it'd be nice to send this out if you want to send it out for input, like you offered for the next meeting.
Glad to.
So,
Sure.
thank you. Okay, let's move down to benefits of membership, and then Jeff, if you have any other comments about your edits, I'd love to hear them in the next 20 minutes.
Sure. I'm happy to walk through the revisions that I made. If you want to, Susie, if you can scroll down to I don't know what section it is. It's the section where we talk about the term and.
Okay, and hey, let's Jeff, thank you. Susie, you said that, or Grant, you can go ahead and speak up if you want, but there were
Sure.
other thoughts about benefits of membership, that section.
I mean, this isn't going to take too long. I think what y'all have is good as far as the ability to apply for funding opportunities, the voting at the meetings, staff members appointed to committees, technical assistants. I think those are all great. Things that we also came up is just to talk about maybe like the idea of informing policy and participating in advocacy on the local level, and just hitting on like your participation in this kind of can help to inform the direction that the city takes around housing and homelessness. Networking was another one, especially if we are, that often comes up as something that's important when we've done surveys in the past. It's like that folks want to be able to do that, and that happens a lot in the coalition meeting with direct service staff, but doesn't happen as often in the CoC meeting just because of the nature of the meeting. And it's often some similar people with some difference. So as we're looking at making the meetings a different format and potentially more appealing to be at. Networking is a big thing, that networking with other agencies and individuals who are working on similar stuff in the city. And then those were the main two that that we wanted to add around in addition to what y'all had.
Can I make a suggestion? Yeah, and not to draw this out at all, I just am wondering about when you talk about informing policy and advocacy. I know there's going to be some agencies that get real nervous about that because they don't understand what advocacy means, and they think that that's going to put their community at risk. So I'm wondering if we just need to have a little bit of education around that, or if we should just call it education, because that also provides those things. Just a thought. I'll shut up.
No, it's a good reminder, Ingrid. Yeah, people get squirrely around me too when I mention policy.
So
okay.
I just want to clarify. So I think part of what you're saying, Ingrid, this is Mark again, is that 501c3 agencies just have to be careful that they're not engaged in grassroots lobbying. And so that's when people start feeling a little weird. They don't want to lose their 501c3 status.
Yeah, I'm aware. They're just a little too anxious, in my opinion. But yeah, so just want to make sure that we're sensitive to that language.
Cool. Hey, Grant, do you mind sending your proposed additions to Susie?
Yeah, I can definitely do that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Do y'all need me for anything else, or am I good to peace out?
You're good. You're good to peace out. Thank you, Grant.
All right. I appreciate it.
It's good to see your face.
Bye, Grant.
All right. Jeff, if you don't mind taking the mic, I think we're going to what, page 5, or let's see.
I just got to say, Jeff, fantastic job. It's so much more readable. Thank you.
Oh, good. I'm glad. All right. So I mean, I think all this we went through last time. What we're looking at now, if you can keep scrolling down, I'll show you the primary revisions I made this go round. Yeah, it's in section 3. So what I did in section 3, and Susie, if you'll scroll back up to the very top of section 3. Sorry. There you go. A little bit more. Yeah, I don't know why. Can you scroll down to section 3, Roman numeral 3?
Page 6.
There we go, right there. Okay, so we talked a little bit last time, and I think I offered my thoughts that this section wasn't entirely clear. I may not have nailed everything here, but what I thought it made sense to lay out what the Homelessness Planning Council is. So I moved the roles and responsibilities up to section A. And Susie, if you'll scroll to B, to section B, please. I then went into the composition of the Planning Council. So we talk about the different member groups who are part of the Planning Council. We'll scroll down a little bit more. And then to me, one of the things that was most confusing about the way the this provision was previously laid out is we didn't have a real discussion of what a term looked like before we walked into how the different planning group members are elected or appointed and what that means for purposes of a term. So what I tried to do here is peg a term to the Metro fiscal year and lay that out prior to getting into the selection of the planning council members and how their terms will work. I think most of this is self-explanatory. I mean, I certainly want everyone to review it and make sure that I've stated things accurately. There are a couple of questions. Susie, if you'll scroll down just a little bit, you'll see a couple of questions out in the margin there. All right, so let's see. This is for people who are elected through the general membership. Let's see. HPC members shall be elected by the GM from a list of candidates prepared by the nominating committee and nominations made from the floor by voting members of the CoC if those nominees are present or otherwise able to come. Okay. Elections shall occur during the second of 2 semi-annual meetings. All right. I wasn't sure what we wanted to do for purposes of timing here. If we're having semi-annual CoC general membership meetings, it made sense to me for the elections to occur in the second of those annual meetings, such that the term would then begin at the next fiscal year. This is assuming we're running our general membership meetings off the fiscal year as well. So I would assume we do a meeting maybe sometime in the fall and then maybe sometime in the spring. I was thinking the second of those 2 meetings would be when we'd elect new members who then start as of July 1st. Does that make sense to everybody, or is there a better way to formulate that?
Jeff, I'm wondering, I like what you wrote, and I'm thankful that you asked the question, because now I'm thinking we might want to say something like the later of the second semi-annual meeting or the meeting closest to the start of the next fiscal year.
Yeah. Well, and we could say, I suggested some other language in the margin. We could say the last CoC GM meeting before the start of the next fiscal year, if we want to just kind of cover ourselves.
That's simpler. Good.
Okay. So maybe that, so Susie, if you can make that change, I've used the quoted language out there in the comment.
Yep, I'll do that.
Okay. And if you would scroll down, I can't remember if I included other comments or not. Wait, I'm sorry, Susie. I think the scrolling is it goes big steps at a time, and I think we might have missed a comment or two. Can you scroll to the top of page 8? Okay. All right. So the next comment was just me agreeing with a previous comment. There's a reference to the chairs of the standing committees and how they can resign. I agree that's probably better in the committee section. And then that may be all the comments or questions I had. Let me pull up my draft on my end too, just to make sure there's not anything else. Yeah, I think those are the main revisions and comments I had for this draft.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thanks. My apologies on the scrolling, because my this thing is buffering like crazy. So it's, and then all of a sudden I realized I'm on pages ahead of where I wanted to be.
No, that's okay. I assume that's what was happening, but I think the comments that I had in section 3, I think we've addressed. Those were the, section 3 was really what I spent my focus on with this latest round of revisions.
All right. Any other edits or comments? Not necessarily about, what Jeff just went through, but any other parts of the document? And this isn't the last chance.
I think we're 99% there. Great work.
Thanks
agreed.
so much, Jeff.
Okay. Sorry, Suze. Go ahead.
Great. Well, and then I'll be glad to, again, sort of do a cleanup version of this, but I'm also going to keep this sort of stuff in a parallel folder so that we'll have the comments and, explanation for changes and all that kind of stuff, because I think that as we've seen in the past, when this gets introduced to the general membership, there can be some very pointed questions, and then keeping those comments and the sort of the reasoning in the track changes sort of version is helpful.
Thanks, Susie. I was going to ask if, I know it's helpful. I didn't know if we would share that publicly or would need to, but okay. So I suggest, Suze, yeah, when you get that clean version, if we could share that with the committee, that'd be awesome. And then if for homework, we could read through it, make any, last kind of edits or whatever. We'll bring those to the next meeting. I'd encourage Abigail and Judy, if you all have time, I'd love to hear and see any comments that you have on this document for the next meeting. And then if we have an opportunity to send this to a HUD TA provider to get their comments, I think that might be helpful as well. I don't want it to hang up this process, but if they could do a quick review, that could help as well.
Then we don't have to vote twice.
Yes.
We could just copy that person or people in on the version that I send out to the committee members to look over, and then they can be looking that over at the same time.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks, Susie. All right.
Just as a reminder, so we because we're a public entity body, so we would write back to Susie our direct comments rather than to the group. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I need that reminder. Okay. 5 minutes till. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move. We adjourn.
All right. You guys take care. Have a good, wonderful week.
Thanks to
I
everybody.
second. Sorry. Do we need a second?